Imagine being from one of the most prestigious youth academies in history and playing on the biggest stage of club football just last season as one of the most important pieces on the squad to suddenly moving to Manchester United and having this happen to you.
It's fun to watch. That's behind Rafael Varane. Oh, this chipped effort is going to be really close. Oh, what a goal! Manchester United are behind.
Okay, before you say anything, technically this wasn't his fault. Dalot was the one with a terrible pass that resulted in the lob, because when your defenders have the ball like that, they shouldn't be losing it. But still, he was kind of way off his line, I know. However, this would only be the beginning, and snowballing into what seems to be an ever-increasing list of mistakes, with Onana at times legitimately looking like it's his first time behind goal. Here we are again talking about another Manchester United player, because honestly, right now, it's the club that's truly becoming known as the place where careers come to die. I know being a goalkeeper definitely is not easy, being very difficult both mentally and physically, but especially more so when you're playing with a club as messy as Manchester United. But if you were in a coma last year and just suddenly woke up, you'd probably look at Andre Onana and think there's no way in hell that this is the same goalkeeper. Because he's seemingly gone from a keeper with genuinely insane reaction time to now one that looks like he can't even move his feet, making Onana the most talked about goalkeeper in the world, and not for a good reason, becoming one of the biggest memes in club football. And to be fair, he hasn't exactly been amazing quality. Since the beginning of the season, week after week, it seems he's been making mistake after mistake. And you might think to yourself, especially as someone who isn't a Man United fan, why the hell did they sign him instead of keeping David De Gea? The same David De Gea that won 2 Premier League Golden Gloves, 4 Man United Players Player of the Year awards, and 4 Matt Busby Player of the Year awards. Well, the answer is simple. Because of this guy right here, who I'm convinced has an offshore account somewhere in the Cayman Islands where clubs are giving him a small fee for the daylight robbery prices he's been buying players at since becoming manager. I mean, Onana before coming to United was quality, but somehow Ten Hag convinced the United board that he's one of the top 10 most valuable keepers in the world. The man has to be doing this on purpose. He's essentially hijacked the club, turning it into Ajax 2.0. A majority of longtime United fans actually support this guy. That's crazy. But moving to United was perhaps the worst mistake the young man has ever made in his career. Because with the overall environment, or lack thereof, Onana has began to lose a ton of confidence. And standing in front of the goalpost, it could be the most detrimental thing a keeper can go through. I mean, right now in the 2024 Africa Cup of Nations, we can see how his form at United has carried over to his national team performances for Cameroon. He's been making so many mistakes that he's basically been benched, instead of picking up the gloves, having no choice but to do this. Okay, enough with all that, but to go on a really serious note and look at what's happening with Onana is really sad to witness. Because ever since his debut blunder, which really wasn't all his fault, but was still heavily scrutinized for, it just slowly carried on to further lack of form and confidence. Because if we take a look at the Champions League, Onana is tied for the most goals conceded in the entire tournament with 15. And you might think that's not so bad. There are other keepers who've let 15 goals get passed by them. But if you take a look at the other goalkeeper to do so, Omri Glazer has 31 saves to his 15 goals conceded, while Onana has an abysmal 20 saves to his 15 goals conceded. So out of 35 shots, he's only managed to save 20, an atrocious 57% save rate. Not too far from flipping a coin to see if the ball goes behind the back of the net or not, even making a new record for the most errors leading to goals in a single season by goalkeepers in Champions League history. That's not a record you want to be having. But it's not just the poor statistics. If you look at just how he's conceding these goals, it definitely makes it a whole lot worse. And to be fair, even during his time in Eredivisie and Serie A, there were always a few lacking parts of his game. The first one being that his handling is really shaky and underdeveloped. He'll sometimes leave very dangerous rebounds when blocking shots that should otherwise not be that difficult to fully catch or stop for a keeper, especially of his potential that he showed the world just last season. Onana also has pretty questionable positioning. I mean, you guys can see it for yourself. In one-on-one situations, the man actually moves backwards instead of rushing towards the ball and making his body as wide as possible. And perhaps if the goal was smaller like in futsal, yeah, that would work. But we're talking about a regular goalpost here. Moving backwards is only going to make it so much easier for the opposition to gather themselves and make an even better placed and timed strike. Like imagine Emi Martinez in the World Cup final if he decided to retreat back in front of goal instead of pressuring Kolo Muane's last shot. But still, there are some upsides to Onana's game. That Onana's reaction time is pretty good. At Ajax and especially at Inter Milan, the man had an incredible reaction time. Sure, his weakness with handling and occasional positioning errors were there. Shot after shot, the man was in truly great form and had insane saves on a nightly basis, which is why he was one of the most exciting goalkeepers in the world last season in the first place. Plus, the 2022-23 Inter Milan squad was far from dominant. It wasn't like Lukaku had a monster goal-scoring season or anything. A huge part in why they were so successful was because they were. That brings me to another interesting part of Onana's style. That on the one hand does make him very unique, but also works as a double-edged sword. Because Onana is a very aggressive keeper in terms of coming for his confidence on the ball and range of passing. Especially when he was playing in Ajax under Ten Hag, Onana was basically like a defensive midfielder because he moves so high up to act as an extra pass or to distribute the ball. Which, to be fair, he's pretty good at doing, getting a lob or getting pressed, making a mistake, losing the ball, and getting scored on. I mean, it's hard to be comfortable with a goalkeeper dribbling that much, especially when their much better possession-obsessed playstyle is exactly what Big Brain Ten Hag is going for. Because what he really wants to do is essentially forget about playing defensively and instead focus everything into keeping possession. Because why defend if you can just keep the ball, right? But in all seriousness, to dumb it down as much as possible, Onana is basically the perfect keeper for his vision because he can basically play as an extra passing option for even more possession. But the problem is, he doesn't have the lineup of a prime 2010 to 2012 Spain. And last year, Onana was able to be so confident because Inter Milan's defense was very strong. But with Man United, he just keeps getting scored on, which leads to further lack of confidence, which leads to more mistakes and more memes and, well, you get the point. This is honestly kind of reminding me of Loris Karius and how he really started to lose his goalkeeping form after those huge Champions League final blunders. But in this case, instead of one big match, for Onana it seems to be that every other match, something bad happens. And for goalkeepers, the lack of confidence can truly be their downfall. Plus, with his performances in the Africa Cup of Nations this year, it looks like it's only continuing even further. We all know what happened to Karius after Liverpool, and I'm afraid if Onana can't get back into good form or find some confidence and just keeps getting scored on, the same thing might very well happen to him. Overall, moving to Man United and reuniting with his former manager was probably the worst thing he could have done for his career, as he's now in the worst form he's ever been. But I do hope the man can get back into form, because like we saw a year ago, at his best he can truly be a goalkeeper to rely on. But there is some slight positive note. At least in the Premier League, Onana is 5th in overall saves and 3rd in overall clean sheets. So I can only hope he can find more confidence slowly through domestic competition. Because despite the memes, it doesn't feel good seeing a goalkeeper go from being as good as he was last year to someone who's almost unrecognizable this year.
Listen, we're in this together. We win together, we lose together. Clean sheet is for all of us.
Yeah.
So when we concede goals, the responsible is Andre Onana. My teammates, they are working hard. And if they have to punch finger, they have to punch me because I'm the goalkeeper.
But what do you guys think of Onana? Let me know in the comments if the memes are justified or if it's really just Man United and Ten Hag style overall that are truly cursing this man.